intros, and because that's a big part of today is really just to meet. We've done a few on emails and stuff, but good chance to meet and just look. We're just planning to just have probably a high level overview today and not too much, and maybe over the next couple of months getting more and more detail as we go, just so we don't completely bombard you and at the very start. So the process today, we're all going to jump in and do little bits, but feel free to ask questions if you're unsure, especially acronyms and that. Sometimes we don't even know we're saying them now. So please, when I started, I used to stop people and said, I haven't got time to Google it. Can you just tell me? So yeah, feel free to do that. In time, I'm not sure if you have, but Penny will be able to, we've got a whole list of all acronyms and that for our industry, which helps fast track things a little bit as well.
We were sent a glossary in Excel, which is helpful.
Yeah, it probably didn't make sense then, but it will over time from that side of things too. So, well, I might kick off. So, as you're aware, so Jason Russell, I'm the CEO here. So I've just clicked over probably nearly 6.5 years now, which is a bit scary. And previously, before that, I was CEO in local government for around 10 years. So worked in local government, but between 10 and 14 years. Did a little stint along the river for about 3 years with a federal government funded body, the Area Consultative Committees, of which Colin myself crossed paths probably close to 20 years ago nearly now, isn't it? Well,
it's 21 years ago, Jason.
Yeah. So we actually worked on some partnerships, some projects and stuff is part of that. So, and my background was actually in funds management. I worked in Collins Street for about 14 years managing in funds management with ANZ and then Allianz Global Investors. So used to travel around Australia and overseas quite a lot with that. But with young children, we moved back to the country closer to grandparents. And whilst doing that, we actually took a year off and went around Australia for a year while the kids were young, so which was a great experience. So ended up in employment services, which there is a lot of connections to local government from all that community side of things, but even some of the funds management side of things, the charitable trusts, there's a connection with all that side of things that we used to manage too. So our industries are very, very connected from that side of things too. So I will hand over to who's next. Fleur, did you want to?
Hello, Fleur Cousins. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for CVGT. I've been with CVGT now for 3.5 years, so new to employment services, and similar to Jason, I have a background in local government, so 27 years prior to commencing with CVGT, working across a range of different sectors within local government. So had started off in public health, worked in age and disability services, and then into corporate services and governance. So it's been sort of my pathway. Moved to the country, so I live in Echuca now, born and bred in Melbourne Central, and then moved to the country back in 2017 and to take up a role at the local council at Campaspe Shire, and then moved across to CVGT in 2022, just after the commencement of a couple of our new programs. So, and my qualification is in environmental health. So that's my background, believe it or not. I'll hand over to Amanda to introduce herself.
Thank you, Fleur. Yes, so Amanda Finnis, Chief Information Officer. I joined CVGT in 2020 and it was a new sector for me as well. I like to change sectors up a bit over time. Prior to that, I was CEO at Coliban Water, so I was there for 7 years actually, and that was new as well. Prior to that, state government for about 5 years, where I was doing sort of a combination of online and web strategy with developing what we called citizen-facing online services. So that was really lovely, part development and part strategic work. Prior to which, I actually was in book publishing. So while I was a book publisher, I retrained, did a master's in computer science so I could flip over into the tech side. So that's kind of a nice combination, I think, to have the both the content communication, if you like, as well as the tech side of things. And prior to that, like I was a bit of I'll call myself a Renaissance person. I've done lots of little tiny jobs all over the shop, which I'll be happy to chat to you about over a coffee at one of our meetings sometime. So, oh, and it's the same. We're a tree changer as well. We moved up we're in Sutton Grange, which is about 40 minutes south of Bendigo. And we moved up about 20 years ago from inner city Melbourne.
Thanks, Amanda. Sam.
Good morning. I might lead with that too. I'm a tree changer / lake changer from Melbourne up to Yarrawonga. And so that's the beauty, I think, of our organisation. We've got so many people in different locations, which allows us to really touch different communities, which is fabulous. So my role is Executive Manager People. I have been with CVGT for 4 years, came in to support with some project work and look at in the OD space, and had the opportunity, I think it's only been 3 and a bit months. Can I say it feels a little bit longer than that, within a new role, which is this Executive Manager People, which is fantastic, that we can really bring people practices and initiatives to that executive conversation. So yeah, I love the work that I do. My background, so generalist HR for over 20 years, predominantly in health. So I've spent the last 10 years within public health across New South Wales and Victoria. And then prior to that, a little bit of a hybrid type background, my own consulting, manufacturing, and also funds management in Collins Street, which I do miss getting dressed up and wearing my suit and going to Friday night drinks occasionally. So so that's a little bit of my background. Really looking forward to driving improved people practices this year, and look forward to having both of your inputs and also of the broader board to help sort of shape and consider some of the things that we're looking at. So nice to meet you both.
And it just sort of highlights how small the world is. When we hired Sam, I was talking to my sister who's in Shepparton, and she was a director at the Golden Valley Base Hospital there. And I think Sam, she'd just gone out. She just left and was set up her own consultancy, didn't she? Anyway, I was talking to my sister, and I said, we've just hired, this person from Golden Valley Health in their human resources team, really good and all that. And she goes, "You bastard." She was just about to, she'd just worked with Sam and was trying to get Sam for her. I
wasn't sure where you were going then, I got a bit nervous.
We independently did not know. But yes, it's a very small world from that side of things. Penny.
Hi, so I'm Penny Fitzgerald. I am the executive assistant to Jason, and I have been with CVGT now for 6 years. So Jason started in August, and then I started in December of the same year, and then we had COVID, so we barely got to see each other.
So bushfires and COVID when we first started, and we've sort of back to bushfires and that again now.
Yeah. I am in Castlemaine, or just on the side of Castlemaine, in a place called Campbell's Creek. I haven't actually done a tree change. We just keep progressively moving further and further away. So I have been in Kilmore and Wallan previously, and don't like going to Melbourne. So I'm a career EA, so I've been doing EA jobs in or supporting CEOs for the last 20 odd years. I've worked in different industries, security and property are two of probably the bigger ones. I was new to employment services. It is like a foreign language when you start, because it is completely driven by acronyms. And it was a fascinating eye-opener. I don't think you ever know about employment services until you actually need the service. And because I'd never needed the service, I had no idea that there were all these options available to people. So I thoroughly enjoy working here, and look forward to my 10 years and my long service leave at some stage. Meanwhile, I have also heard from Jane, and she is joining us soon.
Okay. Maybe Cole?
every time I have to introduce myself, I remember other things, Jason. So, I don't think I've had a career path. I think I've had a series of incidental occurrences that have led me to this spot. So when we knew each other, Jason, I think I was the regional manager of Department of Transport and Regional Services or something like that. Prior to that, in sort of going back a few years prior to that, I was a regional manager for the Department of Health, Housing, Local Government and Community Services for the Loddon Mallee region, I think it was. We did a lot of work in Aboriginal health at the time, which led me to some work with the Commonwealth Rehabilitation Service, but also Bendigo Healthcare Group, where we did a lot of service development in the Loddon Mallee regions with the Aboriginal communities around aged care, service development, a whole range of stuff. I also, for a time, stepped into the service system and was a case manager for people with acquired brain injury, which gave me a really good look at the service system from a ground floor level, which is where it needs to work, right? Did that for a while. Was an executive officer for the Campaspe Primary Care Partnership for our Campaspe people there when that first got going, which was another interesting exercise in service coordination, collaboration, etc. Developed some community sort of citizen-led, consultation processes around that. Found my way to the Bendigo Bank through this sort of diverse background at the time when the community bank model was starting to become profitable. And so we had all of these community-owned enterprises around Australia looking at how do they leverage their funding, their profits, to get a maximum community outcome. So I work with them around leveraging government funding, etc. From that, found my way to lead the enterprise network around Australia. We've done lots of works in governance, community development, community planning, all that sort of stuff. I haven't worked in this sector, so that's why I'm fascinating to see what I can learn and to see whether there are some potential synergies with some of the other stuff that I've done. I'm sure there will be. So this is a bit of a new place for me. Reflection on who I'm meeting today. It's a pretty new crew and with a really sort of diverse background, which I think is really, really healthy. So anyway, that's part of who I am, Jason. Oh, and I live in Strathfield, which is about 10 k's out of Bendigo, and we've got Sheepwash Creek that goes around the property. We're about 35 acres here, and we farm. We've got a few sheep, and we've got lots of kangaroos, tiger snakes, and echidnas.
Sounds good.
We don't farm them though.
So Shannon, can you go one up on that one?
Difficult to follow that. But yeah, I've got a interesting, I guess, various journeys that have all sort of merged to where I am today. Yeah, I usually start chronologically. Like my first passion was healthcare. So I started my career as an occupational therapist. I grew up in a relatively rural farming area 2 hours outside Vancouver, Canada. And that's where I started working. And after working in rehab at the Vancouver General Hospital for 2 years, I moved over to WorkSafe. And so I was a vocational evaluator for 2 years, people who were injured on the jobs, and then would assess their ability to return back to their job and then provide rehabilitation and work with them into new employment. So I feel like I've got a bit of an understanding of what that looks like for someone who's changing jobs and injured on the job. Then I decided I wanted to do something, I guess, bigger picture around health systems. So I did an MBA in strategy and then started working in the big consulting firms. So I started with E&Y. And then I moved over to Accenture, and over that sort of next 20 years, I moved my way around the world and worked in many different countries, finally meeting an Australian back in 2011 when I was doing some work in Asia, and then eventually moved over to Melbourne in 2014. And so have been out here since then. So while I was working in the big consulting firms, I guess my area of expertise is really strategy, a lot of work around service design and operating models. And then Accenture is one of the largest technology consultancies. So I've done a lot of work around systems integration, but more kind of around digital and digital strategy and things like that. So for instance, and then my industry areas were health. So I've done a lot in health, including mental health. And I've done a lot of work in government, especially in Australia, New Zealand. And then I've touched a little bit on consumer goods. I found myself working at Coca-Cola for 2 years. And then banking. I was at the Asian Development Bank for a little while as well. So yeah, that was kind of my areas of expertise in that. And then in just after COVID, I decided that it was time for a change, and I kind of worked my way up to managing director at Accenture, and it was all becoming about sales dollars and selling these big CRM and ERP systems that I wasn't so much interested in the back office stuff. So I decided to go out as an independent. So I've been doing independent consulting for the last couple of years, and then moved, although I had some board experience in the past, I've moved more into the portfolio career. So I'm currently on the board of Life Without Barriers, a large social service organization, and on their risk and practice governance committees. And then I'm on a strategy board for Beyond Blue. I've done a lot of consulting work for them and helped them set up a new mental health service for people for targeted at employers. So basically help them set up a new revenue stream where they could move out of just government funding. So it's funded by employers, and it's an early intervention service for people having the beginnings of mental health issues on the job. So I still provide some advisory work for them. And then I'm also involved in advising startups, which is kind of fun. So startups in medical and healthcare. So provide some advice on that. That's me. Oh, and also I live in that very expensive Hobsons Bay area. But yeah, my husband and I are kind of looking to move out of the sort of big city areas. So we're looking forward to spending some time in Bendigo and all the surrounding areas, and seeing what's out there in terms of moving outside the city.
Well, it sounds like you've come to the right board, because the majority of the people here have all done that.
Yeah.
And I live actually over the border in Moama in New South Wales, so Echuca Moama. So yeah, we're all fairly diverse, but we're all pretty attuned to travelling.
Yeah.
So there's a number of us here in Bendigo office today, but we meet everywhere. Best thing about COVID was the development of teams and things like that. So
Yeah.
We are a lot more diversified in our staffing now than we've ever been before, but that's the best way to get the best people available.
Yeah, for sure. That was definitely the golden lining of COVID, was just figuring out that we and
we can exist.
We can work hybrid. Yeah.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, it looks and it's been good hearing from your backgrounds then, because I think the synergies you'll find when we go through and talk about where we're sort of wanting to go and things that we'd like to further progress, there's some really good backgrounds that you've got that will be able to add value to what we're trying to achieve as well. So, Hen, do you want to flick over to the presentation, and we'll just start working through. And when Jane comes in, we might just stop and just we'll just do a quick intro for Jane. She jumps in as well. So. Yeah, so look, you've met us. I'm not sure. There's just the CFO role. I'll just touch on that too. I'm not sure if Lee got a chance to send out an email, but just before Christmas, our CFO resigned. We'd had a couple of frank discussions, and we decided it was probably best interest to separate. So we're just working through the best fit for our organisation at the moment. So we've got our contingencies in place and working through that. But I just wanted to let you know that sometimes things don't quite fit right, and you're better off to make the decision early. So we've done that, and we'll work through that as well. Just if you keep flicking pen, we just want to give a bit of an overview, just the background. Now, some of this you may have read on websites and stuff, but we'll just go over a little bit of it as well. Yeah. So CVGT started back in the Bendigo region back in the early 80s. So we've just gone over 40 years. And it was pretty much 5 local governments all coming together, which now is all under the city of Greater Bendigo, but there was all the 5 smaller ones. And it was about a persistent youth unemployment issue back in the early 80s. And they come together. And the solution they came up with was about through apprenticeships and traineeships to try and engage young people and look at that. So that's where the CVGT is. So it's Central Victorian Group Training. And that evolved. It's had a few different sort of name variations of that, but essentially that's where it's at. Now, there's a couple of other organisations you might have heard of, MEGT, and there's a few different ones that advertise. It was pretty much the group training is the organisation that helps, the registered organisation, but the acronym at the start really symbolised what region they were from. So there was Melbourne East Group Training, so MEGT, and there's quite a few others now. I've still got their underlying names, but they trade as other businesses. So we're one of the founding group training organisations in the state. So there's only a handful of us that have been going for that full time. So so that's how it started. There was a bloke on a bike who used to ride around Bendigo to see the apprentices, and it evolved from that. So through that apprenticeships, and then we got bigger in that area, and then the government started to outsource the employment services. So that's where CVGT started to grow that little bit as well. So we might just stop. Morning, Jane. How are you going?
Morning, guys. Sorry about that. I had a dentist appointment which went over, so my profuse apologies.
No, that is fine. We've just done some introductions from that side of things, so we're sort of just starting. So maybe if you want to just do a quick little intro of yourself, and then we'll go around and then we'll link into it. Hopefully, you didn't have too much work done.
No, just a clean. No. It's all good. Okay. It's all good. No, I can actually speak. Lovely to meet you all. So Jane Burns, my background is in mental health and suicide prevention. Super passionate about people-centred care, and really looking forward to joining the board and getting to know you all and getting to know the business. My personal reason for being so passionate about it is that I have Angus, who's 19, who lives with Down syndrome, autism, and is non-verbal. And so I've been watching his little journey into employment over the last little while and thinking there are some things that are great about this, but there are some things that are not so good. And as a carer and as someone who wants him to do the best that he possibly can, I think organisations like CVGT are at the very forefront of innovation and doing amazing work. So thank you. Lovely to be here, and my apologies again for being late.
And Jane, just for everyone's benefit, I do believe you were involved with the Inclusion, is that right, the Inclusion Foundation or Impact 21?
Yeah, so I joined what was called Emotion 21 back when the partnership with CVGT was just beginning. And so led the relationship with Torrens Uni, the industry engagement, and obviously working with Kate and Luke and the team across into CVGT and others, saw that first cohort go through. So I think, again, beautiful testimony to what can be achieved when organisations think a little bit outside of the box. So yeah, I did. I loved it.
Yeah, no, it was great. So for Shannon Cole, so the Inclusion Foundation was an umbrella over the Emotion 21 and Impact 21, so for Down syndrome. And so we've still got a graduate working with us. We've had a number. So Jamie is, he's a very important part of our team and keeps us very level. Keeps me very level.
I adore Jamie. Jamie did a lot of it. Jamie and I did a presentation. He might remember it. There's a beautiful photo where we had to pitch for a check, and he was the rock star, and I was the nervous one who was not particularly good. But we raised about $17,000 on this sort of one of those startup nights. He was amazing.
Yes, he's still the ideas department. I get a few LinkedIn messages every now and then going, Jason, I've got some ideas we could do this better or whatever. But even to the point where he's presented to the department. So we've said to him, if you think the department could do things better with readability or things like that, you write down. Yes, he did a great job. So he's a bit of a star in our team.
I think he's coming up for an anniversary too, isn't he? Soon?
He'll be 5 years next year.
5 years, yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So I dropped in and visited him the other day, and his desk is set up like he could actually put a man on the moon. He's got that many screens on his desk now. He's managing the whole organisation, I think, from that side of things. We'll go quickly. And so Jason Russell, the CEO, I've been here 6.5 years now. Jane, we're recording this as well, so we can catch up from some of that as well. So, Fleur, did you want to just introduce yourself?
Fleur Cousins, Chief Operating Officer, been with CVGT for 3.5 years.
Yeah. Amanda Finnis, CIO, so Chief Information Officer. And we've recorded our stories earlier, so you can see those. I've also been around 5 years.
And Sam?
Hi, Jane. So Sam Fraser, my role is Executive Manager People, and I've been with CVGT for 4 years and in this new role for about 3 and a bit months. So nice to have you on board.
Penny?
Penny Fitzgerald, Executive Assistant, and have been part of the organisation for 6 years now.
And Colin, Shannon and Jane, I'm assuming you've all met.
Yes. Hello again.
Yep. Yeah. Merry Christmas. Yeah. We did an orientation with Michelle when we first joined back in September, just with the onboarding.
And I think there's a lunch or something coming up or shortly too to catch up as well.
Next
this Saturday.
Yep.
Yeah. So we might jump into. We just started doing the overview, and so Jane, we're just going to work through. All of us are going to just jump in and talk a little bit about there, and very high level at this stage. We don't want to bombard too much about all the details. And finances and things like that. We're going to have a separate section. There's a lot of detail in all those sort of things that we need to talk about. So, just jump in and ask questions as you go.
Jason, I just had a question. Is the CVGT brand, what sort of brand awareness or recognition do you have? Because I was just on the website and figured out what the Central Victoria Group training. I was like, oh, I wonder what that acronym means. I was just curious what that means. And then I also just curious that little those two intersecting teardrops, what does that sort of mean as well on the brand there, if anything?
So the brand itself is a tricky one. In certain areas we have strong brand awareness because in the areas we work, people know who we are and that. I remember working in local government, we'd put stuff on the front page of the paper and advertise, and we do articles. And until somebody actually needs it, the brand awareness is not there. And then once they need it, they go, now I remember that place. I think the challenge for us, which we constantly grapple with, is it's a bit of a tongue twister, and the CVGT people want to go, well, what does that mean? Nowadays, it actually doesn't just mean Central Victorian Group Training. It's only a small part of what we do. And that's why some other organisations trade as, from that side, they've sort of changed that around a little bit. When I first started, it was CVGT Australia, and the logo was actually a map of Australia, which wasn't quite representative of what or who we are. So the little teardrop is really about the interconnectedness. They're also the pinpoints when we use on our maps and things like that as well. So there's the people that sort of looked at it, there was a whole heap of different marketing sort of things that put into it, but a lot of it is about that connected with the communities, and they're the pinpoints of those communities. So that's where that is. But that's something. Even in our strategic plan, which we'll talk a bit about later, it's about the identity. And you can't just change those things easily, without, a lot of cost, but also, you've got to do a lot of branding, marketing to make sure people understand it. But in the areas we operate, people do know it. But outside of that, it starts to wane off fairly quickly from that side of things too.
Yeah, thanks.
So Yeah, so where you can see the, for those who haven't been to Bendigo or our Long Gully site, you'll see the picture there, the old school building. So that's the original Long Gully school building, and it's coming up to 150 years old in the next couple of years. So we're a custodian of that building. So we do have some staff work out of that thing. And then you'll see there's a little hall just beside the CVGT sign there. That's actually another old school that was relocated to that site as well. So and all our offices are actually behind that. So that's a very well-known landmark in the area. If people don't know where you are, you just say it's the old Long Gully School on the hill, and everyone knows where that is. So yeah, a little bit of history there, but yeah, it's an important thing for us. But there's also, we own all that site, and it is something that it is a costly thing to maintain an old building like that. So we'll be probably looking at some heritage grants in the next year to help do some works on that as well, to keep it in the state that it is.
Beautiful building.
Oh, it's quite stunning.
Yeah.
So Cole, you had the privilege of having a quick little walk around on Friday afternoon. There's a lot of potential, isn't there?
Oh, there's a lot of, you can just feel a history. You can almost hear the voices of the school kids rushing up and down the stairs. And it's wonderful language, isn't custodian of the building, because it is part of the city's heritage.
Yeah.
I was just going to add, it's very beautiful on the outside. I think over the years, the internal works have not added to the beauty of that lovely old building, unfortunately.
Yeah, so we've actually done a lot of work on that, and so we've got all the history now and what it all looked at the different stages. So we're just working through with council, etc., to say how can we strip things back to what it used to be a bit more, and it actually will be more functional if we did that. So there's a bit of cost involved, but that's something we need to sort of look at and chip away as well. While I'm just on this properties as well, we also own a number of other properties. So we own a commercial block building in Bendigo, two-storey building in King Street, so which we rent out as office spaces. So that's fully tenanted at the moment with NDIA, another NDIS provider, and also the Indie School are in there as well. So there's quite a bit of room there. We also own the our Shepparton office. It's a two-storey office in Shepparton. Echuca, we own a two-storey office in Echuca, which we operate out of as well. And we own a building in Charlton, in central Victoria as well. So we have quite a property portfolio with that, in addition to what we have invested in stuff as well.
And Jason, I was just curious, how much do clients or people who are using the services come into the offices, or is that most of that work remote? I was just curious.
Yeah, so this one's primarily our sort of corporate base, Shannon. There's that little hall sort of school building at the moment actually runs some services for our parent pathways. So parents come in there with their children. So we've set that up with a little play area and some offices in there as well. More from a financial point of view, while we're growing that, it will go there. If we get a bit more scale, it'll be more cost effective to move out to somewhere else, but it's sort of central to where we're operating. The rest of it is primarily corporate staff and support staff in there. In Bendigo, we actually have another office in town, in the Mollison Street, which is a quite large office that sees participants from that side of things as well. So you'll see here, this is just a quick overview of where we currently operate. Now, there's probably expanded out a little bit more. So if you go down to Tasmania into Hobart, you may have seen in my update, I've just done last week throughout Tasmania, seeing staff. Where you see the Hobart little dot that says 9, we actually have offices at Glenorchy, at Sorrel, Rosny Park, down at Huonville and Kingston, etc. So there's a number of different offices, and some operate full-time, part-time, and some are just an outreach, and an outreach might be just one day a week, etc. And they might be in a library or a community centre or things like that, neighbourhood houses and stuff. So we try and locate where there's community activity already, and plus sometimes us renting their facilities helps their income streams as well. So we sort of try and look at all those options. So where you see those little dots, in some cases where there's the yellow and it has a number, there's other outreaches and stuff that flow from that. And in quite a few, especially say the Goulburn Murray, we can run up to 5 different programs nearly from a site or in an area. Where we can and co-locate, it's more cost effective just to run the service. But the department are also getting a bit cagey on that and are restricting co-location of programs for some unknown reason at different cases. So in some cases, we may have an office literally a block away from the main office just to run another program. So these are the little intricacies that we have to deal with, and you'll get used to that working with some of these government contracts that we deal with. So anyway, so a fair diversity of area that we cover. A lot of opportunities still to infill and to spread through Tasmania, Victoria. With the change from DES to IEA in the disability program, we lost a bit of the southern New South Wales. We were up in Liverpool, in Sydney, and around that whole Wagga sort of region in southeast New South Wales. But yeah, we've lost that, but we've picked up some more in Victoria, so it's sort of spread it around a little bit as well. If you want to move on, Pen. Just a quick one, and you get a copy of the slides and stuff as well, but just so that you can visualise how the teams are working. So you'll see myself and you see the exec at that first level, and just some of the different team members that report through to them from that side of things. So under Sam, you know, we're very structured now people and culture team, so that's very targeted in how they support, but they also provide generalist backgrounds as well. And we've got a dedicated work health and safety officer. So Steve Ventners really looks at that and has really helped us lift our work health and safety across the organisation. Then Amanda's team. So we've got with our day-to-day sort of IT operations, and then our digital team where we're looking at how we transformation of the organisation. Finance. So Robin's our finance manager. And we've got under that is our payroll, but also our property and assets teams. And then Fleur, we've got marketing, comms, governance, our customer service, and all our program assurance that looks after all our contracts to make sure we're looking after them. And then our two teams that we've just in the last month separated a role into two, so that the programs, it was coming quite a large role to do. So if you want to flick to the next page, we spread out the two groups of programs. So we've got workforce and to transition to work and apprenticeships under Luke, and then we've got the disability, so the IEA program and parent pathways. And we're also doing a lot of work with the justice system in Victoria, which we want to, it's an informal partnership at the moment, and justice is probably partly with that is that it's very, they don't know what different parts of their organisation are doing. So we're in the process of really probably formulating a project around that to sort of highlight to them the amount of work we're doing back to them. And because we also see there's a growth opportunities getting into with our parent pathways program into the women's prisons and into another so the juvenile justice as well. So we think we can really expand that role, and we've also been talking to some of the prisons in Tasmania. There's some real opportunity, but I really want to go back with a proposal to them to say this is how we can solve your problem for you from that side of things, and not just a sort of half-baked partnership approach. So yeah, there's a fair bit of work, but I think there's a lot of real opportunity for us. So we do mainstream pre-release, but we're also doing some disability side of things as well. So we think if we can pass it all up, we can come up with a really good offering, holistic for government.
Jason, I was going to say, that's really great around the prisons. I was just wondering, in terms of those apprentices that become employees of CVGT, are they just, I guess, are they treated sort of like, I'm just curious, like how long are they typically employees for, and are they treated sort of, I don't mean that like, are they treated differently, but
no, I know
because
exactly
they would be onboarded and then they would be exiting at some point. I'm just curious how that works.
Yeah. It's a constant discussion with us about to the level of an employee and because we actually run two payroll systems. We have two systems, one for apprentices and trainees and then one for our main staff. We have to treat them slightly differently because it is a whole different concept. However, there's a lot of rights and things that we make sure that they are the same as what we are. So all the inductions and work health and safeties and things like that, we try to instill that exactly the same. However, when we host them out, it's like they're being leased. So for a period while they're doing their traineeship, could be anywhere. A traineeship can go from 1 to 2 years, and an apprenticeship can go from anywhere 3 or 4 years. So they'll be with us at that stage as long as they're still with that host. We have the ability to move hosts. So if it doesn't work with one, we can move them to another one so they can progress. Or if they want to change their apprenticeship, they have the ability to move around a little bit more flexible. So while they're on that, we try to make it the same as best we can. But we don't include them in, and this is the other thing we sort of grapple with, should we include them in our total staff numbers or not? So the staff numbers you'll see at the moment are not including of the apprenticeships and side of things. So it's a good question, and it's one we grapple with exactly how it should be treated. But yeah, we still operate everything the same, but in two separate side of things. So this slide here, again, it just shows you the breadth of all our teams. So we have regional manager structure, and then there's teams, just covering all that geographical spread from around that. It is a challenge. In some cases, a manager may manage numerous programs underneath them and staff. In other areas, it's very specific. It just becomes on the size of the teams. I think our current caseload is just around 14,000 people across our programs. So primarily, it's about 60% of our caseload is through Workforce Australia, and then about 25% in IEA, or Inclusive Employment Australia. And then we get down to Parent Pathways. We have about 1,100 on that, and then about 850 in transition to work. So, but that doesn't actually tie back to profitability, or that the margins are very different at every different program. And we'll go into that when we talk finances in more detail as well.
Jason, I'm obviously the question person. I was just curious as well. It makes sense that you organize yourselves around the programs, and I guess that the funding that's coming in, and then obviously the geographies, because I assume that people need to understand the geography and what's sort of happening there, and then connection with employers, etc. But I also wonder about expertise around particular industries and job types. Where does that sort of come into the org chart, if at all? Like what? Just curious, like construction, for instance. Do we have someone who specializes in that and then cuts across programs, or?
No, not at this stage, Shannon. Yeah. It pretty much those at a regional level, and why some of the regions are structured the way they are, they fit into the department regions as well, so that we can clearly do that, because the labour markets, and we do labour market trending reports and things like that. So we do them at a localised level. From that side of things. Now, strategically, we might look at aged care at a higher level and sort of go, hey, how do we start to get that and look at that across the organisation as opportunities, etc. So we sort of look at it that way, but not in a particular industry sector, because it varies so much, even within a region, from a town to a town, like from one end of that region to the other. It varies considerably. So we sort of look at it from that context. Whereas the apprenticeship side of it, we do specialise in a few different areas to sort of, that we do have that specialisation a little bit as well from that side of things.
And Jason, the RMs, they're our main point of connection, place-based. So they're working local relationships, etc. Yeah,
them and the managers, Cole.
Yeah. Yep.
So we expect most of those teams, when we talk to managers, say if we've got Megan, who's the Eureka IEA under Callum, that's in Ballarat. They all live, that whole team all lives in Ballarat. They're generally connected into different organisations. They're on different committees, etc. So they'll have that. Whereas Callum will come in more strategically across that region to sort of, tying back to what Shannon's question was, hey, there's opportunities here. So especially, if we get into where Callum's region in Western Victoria, there's a lot of mineral sands mining and that heading towards sort of back of Crang, all the way up to Mildura. There's some, and wind farm, actually a bit of wind farm starting to come into there now, but solar. So there's some different industries, and then the horticulture. So you'll start to really target those ones where that's not the same case in other areas. But so that's where he'll have probably that little bit extra knowledge. And then at some stage, I come in even at a higher level, talking with the minerals at the higher level from their associations and stuff to try and open up some doors for people. So that's the structure at the moment. And that's part of, you'll see later, we're looking at that continuous improvement and how we can sort of reframe and do some of these things even better going forward, because everything's changing. And if we keep sitting still, we miss out from that side of things. Pen, do you want to keep moving? So I'll throw across to Sam just to give you a bit of background on just of our organisation from a staffing point of view.
Thanks, Jason. So I'm just hoping to step you through a bit of a high-level picture around the composition or insights from a workforce perspective. And Jane, I just really wanted to acknowledge the comment that you made with regards to your son and his journey and through the employment services, I suppose his experience, and something that never wears thin or isn't acknowledged by our team is that I think when you get to a certain career, at a certain time in your career, when you're really choosing where you want to work and the team that you want to work for, it is around that rationale and the why. And I feel like our team is really connected to making sure that we are here to get the right people with the right skills to actually be able to deliver the services across multi-programs. And so just to hear that, I think, is nice messaging for me to go back to the team as well, because it really reinforces our rationale and I suppose our modus operandi for being here. But just wanted to, I suppose, give you a snapshot. So at the moment, and it's a bit of a moving feast, we have 327 staff. So from an FTE perspective, just under 300. This again can be a bit of a moving feast dependent on our programs and our vacancies. And coming into IEA at the moment, we are still recruiting into areas within our IEA footprint. So generally we sort of are around here, but can sort of go up to that 340 plus. That excludes our directors. So when we add our directors in, that goes into the 330s. From a composition perspective, we are 70% female and 30% male, so similar to sort of health sector. And that is also a reflection around our management structure. So we are 30% male managers, 70% females. The only difference is the executive team, which is quite higher in that proportion at this point in time. So our average age is 43, and I think again going back to why people do things, I think that is part of when you reach a certain part of your time in your career. It's the work that fulfills you and makes you really happy to see the impact that you make. So 43 sort of our average age, but as you can see from that 30 to 60, that we do have quite a considerable composition of our workforce within those age groups. We have some amazing tenured employees. So I think our highest and longest standing employee, correct me if I'm wrong, Pen, is 26 years. But every year we have quite a lot that go 5, 10, 15. So we do have people that once they join are really connected to the work that we do, the programs that we deliver, and we can retain for longer for careers, which is fabulous. You'll see there we do have quite an uptake or quite a high tenure component within the 0 to 1 at the moment, and that's obviously part of IEA and our recruitment approach in the last few months. So our goal is to move everyone through those years, and just as a bit of a tidbit, our average is 3.7 years for our tenure.
Sam, it might be worth just touching to that our industry, the turnover side of things as well.
Yeah.
Because it was a shock to me when I came to this industry, the level of turnover.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. So our industry turnover, and we have some regulatory sort of partners that provide this data. So we get this data generally biennially. It's around 40%. So it is really significant when you compare it to other industries such as health or private sector, funds management, etc. And we do find that our turnover tends to really peak within that first year first 24 months. And so for us, from a strategic perspective, it's really how do we make sure that people have a great understanding of what the role requirements are, and then that they've got the right training at the right time in order to enable them to be able to hit the ground, but also to see, I suppose, have that opportunity to make the most and make a difference in their role. So from a P&C strategy perspective, turnover in those first 2 years is a huge area for us.
Yeah,
Samantha,
we
I'm just wondering, do those people, do they stay in the industry and go to competitors, or are they sort of new to the industry and decide that employment services is not for them? Or
yeah, it is a little bit of a mixed bag from what we can sort of understand from the data. But we do, I think we do tend to, with collect the exit interview data, which does indicate at times people do move to different industries. There's also the overlay with, I suppose, the remuneration piece and, cost of living and where remuneration sits within our sector. And so we have to be very cognizant of that and how we deliver, career opportunities as well as different employee value proposition components that make them actually, understand the bigger picture of the employment experience, not just the remuneration. But it's definitely the REM piece is something that we hear across all providers, and that there are times when people then just need to change industry to uplift their REM.
Yeah.
And the other challenge too is there's that real social purpose that people have to want to make a change. And in some of these employment consultant roles, they're really tough. That face to face, and to some of the staff, it is quite confronting, and they think they're ready for it, but they're not quite. And that's a big part of what we've got to get, in our industry, is get better at how we, manage the expectations at the start.
Yeah.
There's also just the other element that's anecdotal, and we don't have hard data on it, but that the level of administrative load of doing those frontline roles is quite high when people are driven by their purpose to help people. And so it's a bit of a they butt up, and that's more. We need to do more on that.
Yeah. And role clarity.
Is there a challenge between managing a workforce with sometimes the vagary of the programs and maybe the limited tenure of some of the programs as well? Is it part of the challenge?
Yeah, that comes out in quite a few of the government reviews, in the contracts and the longevity of the contracts. It creates churn and a lack of certainty. And there's a big push to try and increase the skill level of the staff. They're entry level roles. So a lot of staff are not overly trained, but the government, there's a remuneration gap as well. So there's a real challenge in that side of things. So we, especially in the disability side of things, we're really keen to be, where we can, drop our ratios, our caseload ratios down, so it is more, person-centred, and the staff are trained a lot more. But there's a tension between that and what you can afford into the thing. So that's the real challenge, and it's something that government has really got to, look at, from that side of things as well. So it's an industry thing, but we're slightly better than the industry, but we think we're really hoping to, improve that as well. So
just a quick question. I assume none of the staff are union members? I'm just curious. Yeah. And
very different than local government, where I used to deal with five unions. No, it's slightly different, but we have to try and look after the best interest of our employees, that balance, so that we have the PBI and things, but at the end of the day, it's what people take home in their pay packet is what counts. So
yeah. And do the government contracts that you have, I assume they might set things like percentage, administration that can go to administration versus frontline. I'm not sure, but I guess what my question is there any setting of what the remuneration is through the government contracts, or is it all slightly different between different organizations that provide employment services?
Our staff are covered by 2 key awards, so our Labour Market Award and our SHADS Award, which is our Social Community Award. And then we do have a smaller percentage that are on individual contracts, but they are the driving instruments that we use to provide consistency and adherence to the sector.
And the government monitors those awards very closely for those sectors as well. Jane? Yeah,
thank you. What proportion of staff members have a disability or are identified as a person with a disability?
That's a good segue for the next slide.
Perfect. But before we go on to that,
that's something we prepared earlier.
I thought you might have that. I just wanted to comment on the admin burden, because certainly my observation, having obviously worked in the government for that very short period of time around people strategy, but also with my experience with Angus and the amount of paperwork that staff are having to deal with just to get him in the door before, even before you start any of that process. I think it's worth just flagging from a strategic perspective, what can we do to reduce that admin burden? Because I think, while you're saying it's anecdotal, it's almost killed me. Last year, I spent my whole year doing admin, which could have been digitised, which could have been simplified. I think I told the story about 50 times. The poor people at the end of the phone, or at the end of, even at the end of the computer, sort of still doing pencil and paper and then uploading into PDF. So that sort of stuff doesn't feel very strategic, but I actually think it is incredibly strategic from a workforce perspective.
I might just jump in there, Jane, if that's okay, just briefly. We'll talk more about it later, but that is a big focus for us in terms of transforming the business with digital, looking for those opportunities to reduce the burden of the administrative requirement we have to do. Yeah.
The big challenge for us is the advocacy that we've got to keep pushing back through our peak bodies and things like that. And Jane, your voice on the board will be invaluable support from that side of things too, because it is a big issue. Like, even just getting digital signatures, like that was for the department, that was just like, wow, this is a huge change, and we're going, oh my God, let's move on. So there's a lot of things we know that can be really improved, but it's about, we've just got to keep going into that. And when we talk the strategy part later on, there's a section there that we really want to focus from an impact point of view, that we can have bigger impact even through advocacy and research. From that side of things too. So there's a whole heap of ways that we want to really focus on that. It is holding back the industry considerably from that side of things. Tam, do you want to touch on?
Yeah, thank you. So we're really proud of this, that in 23 we looked at undertaking the Inclusive Employer Survey as part of Diversity Council of Australia. I don't know whether any of you have sort of worked with this previously. And so we actually weren't sure where we'd land, and we were recognised in our first year and had some amazing feedback and stats. We also had 75% of our workforce participate, which, as you know, with surveys, when there are so many that come their way, was just extraordinary. So we just last quarter went back through the same process, and we have been recognised again as well, which, as mentioned, we are so proud of that. So just a snapshot, and again, the overlay, I suppose, or the consideration of our footprint, and from down the Frankston, Dandenong Peninsula way through to regional, we have a beautiful melting pot of staff, but it is very diverse, and just means from a people and strategy perspective, we need to make sure that we're sort of considering some of these with our practices. So 16% multilingual workers, 42% caring responsibilities, Jane 26% with a disability, and again that's based on 72% participation this year, 14% born overseas, and we speak 34 languages, and we have 4% Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander representation and 10% LGBTIQ plus identified people. So yeah, it's a really great insight into the diversity that is attracted to our organisation, but also, I suppose, the breadth of skills and experience and lived experience they can then apply to our customers and participants.
Sam, I think it's worth touching to just that psychological safety of people now willing to start, giving more information in regards to that. We have to be really careful when people are putting sensitive information and that there's a trust. So there's been a lot of work done in that area too, hasn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also now informing a lot of our actions and strategies around diversity, access and inclusion, and also around our reconciliation practices as well. So we definitely know there are opportunities to improve that psychological safety, because we still have a little bit of a gap potentially in the data that we collect within our employment system. But from this survey, we've got a really nice, accurate, or a really good representation. So it's then now shaping on our practices that we apply. Don't know whether any questions around that sort of composition thoughts.
I'll just comment on the 26% with disability, that it'd have to be one of the highest ones that I've seen. I don't know if the Diversity Council put out a report on proportion of people who are employed, but I know with the agency itself, it was at 21%. So you sort of going, it's kind of interesting to see and fantastic to see.
Yeah, no, as I mentioned, the third time, like, we were so proud of this, and it also just gives us such a good insight to then inform our improved management practices around supporting people with lived experience and disability, ensuring that from a team cohesion and a team effectiveness and awareness perspective, that we've got this data to then be able to go out.
And especially in some of the areas we work in, from a cultural point of view, it's really important to have staff that can speak languages and be assimilated in those communities, because there's a lot of trust is required in certain cultures. So that's really important. So we put a lot of emphasis on that, especially having probably multilingual staff in certain areas that are well connected.
Yeah, I was just looking at that and thinking that looks really, really strong.
And I suppose supporting this information, or supporting the actions that then come as a result of this data, are two key working groups that are by invitation across the business, and that is diversity, inclusion and access, and that's called our We Will group, that essentially get in and we will make a difference. And then our RAP team that are really trying to work to support our First Nations people. They do interconnect at times, but they are two quite separate working parties too, that use this data to then inform how we go out back to the business. Thanks, Pen. So obviously the people practices are key, but also there's the culture piece, which also is really key to our team, and that in engagement as well. So we have, I feel like waving back because they're all waving, and we have two key areas or touch points with our staff, again, with a biennial focus. So we run an engagement survey that's through an organisation called BPA that we've partnered with for a very long time. Gives us a really great cross-section of our engagement, and also allows us to drill deeper into our programs and our areas. So we'll be rolling that out this year, first to second quarter this year. And we also, as mentioned, do our inclusive employer survey, and so we alternate them so that we're getting some good touch points over a consistent time frame. And we're also rolling out one-on-ones with every manager in the business over the course of the next quarter, just to get a bit of a pulse around their own management challenges, concerns, feedback, but also their own development activities, which will then allow us to build some stronger L&D management type frameworks and capabilities. So the culture and engagement piece is a really strong area of passion and focus for the team, and we look forward to sort of pulling some of that data together this year and sharing it with you, so you get a little bit more insight into where our people are thinking and feeling around their careers, but also the work they do.
Cool. Thanks, Sam. Might throw over to Fleur just to go through some of the program overviews.
Thanks, Jason. I'm going to take you on a whirlwind tour of our programs, conscious of the time we have available. But in doing that, I'd also say that throughout the year, we actually run deep dives, and they will be presented at the board level, where we actually break down one program at a time and go through them in a lot more detail, and what the current performance is, as well as what the current pressure points are for each of the programs. So this won't be your only opportunity to get more of an in-depth understanding of the programs. And also, I know Michelle has set up a time in a couple of weeks to go through the funding models and the finances, and I'll be able to touch on the programs in a bit more detail of understanding how they are funded in a separate session. So I'm going to step through each of the programs that we offer under our program. And if you move to the next slide, Penny, if I can just, this is a visual to try and set the scene. Our federally funded programs are all actually guided by essentially the social services legislation of Australia. So that really is our governing piece of legislation as to how those programs are actually delivered, but it also sets the really stringent requirements around how we must operate from the perspective of how the funds are used, how we actually pause and hold compliance in those programs to really force engagement in some of the programs, and that's not all of the programs, and that's called mutual obligations. But then it also sets out as to how we actually need to manage the release of information and all of those things because of that social services legislation. We have four programs funded by two different departments. So our Workforce Australia Transition to Work and Parent Pathways programs sit under the Department of Employment and Workplace Relations, and our Inclusive Employment Australia program sits under the Department of Social Services. All of those programs, we deal directly with the department in the funding of those programs, and we have a relationship with our provider leads for each of those programs. However, the way participants and people engage with those programs is through Services Australia or Centrelink. So they are our referral source for our participants. If I step down, we have how we manage all of that information and receive referrals is through our Workforce Australia online system. It is now one system that manages all of our programs. So the Inclusive Employment Australia, as part of that changeover, we moved on to Workforce Online. There's a subset within Workforce Online now for Inclusive Employment Australia. But we also run a system internally in-house called our JRL system, which is really a case management system that interfaces with Workforce Australia Online. So, and it provides a conduit of information. Just the other thing I will say before I go into each of the individual programs, the referral source for the Workforce Australia program is only through Services Australia. So there is no opportunity for direct registration into that program. So if someone approaches us and says that they want to participate in that program, we refer them back through to Services Australia or Centrelink to then, and we guide them as to how to go through that process and request that they come back to us as a provider. With the other three programs, there is an opportunity to directly register with us, and we can support that registration and then achieve an assessment through Services Australia with them already connected to us. So that's just the different referral pathways that occur for those programs.
Fleur, just a quick question. Is there any interface or funding at all through state or local government, or everything's federal?
So all of these four programs are federally funded. We do have apprentices and traineeship program that has a funding stream through state government, which also has a connection through to DEWA, if I'm correct, Jason. So that is slightly different. We used to run a number of programs, Second Chance, and also our youth participation program through state government that was born out of funding from COVID, essentially through, I can't remember the department name, Jason, but Jobs.
Jobs Victoria.
Jobs Victoria.
So we ran programs for them, and it wasn't necessarily COVID, but for a number of years, more targeted in Victoria.
Yeah, okay.
But when the credit card maxed out, all those programs were closed.
So we no longer have those programs.
And we've tried in Tassie. Tassie's a different sort of structure with funding from a state. They have like a big foundation. So we've had a couple of cracks there, but that's where we're sort of looking at other opportunities.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that later, but we're very keen to sort of diversify just from the federal. It is a core part of what we do and a sort of centerpiece, but we're sort of held hostage a little bit too from that side of things.
Yeah.
So moving on, I'll step through each of the programs individually. So Workforce Australia, as Jason, go to the next slide for me. Workforce Australia is our primary, essentially our largest funded contract with the amount of participants that we have in it. We operate in 4 licensed areas or 4 regions across Victoria and Tasmania. However, each of those regions have multiple service locations across that geographic footprint in each of those licensed areas. It is a quality-driven contract, so there is a quality and performance framework that sits over that, and a quality assurance framework as well that we need to achieve compliance against. So there is a number of auditing and self-assessments as part of that framework that we need to adhere to across the life of the contract. It is targeting.
It might be worth just saying those different ISOs and stuff that we have to.
Yeah, sure.
As a job.
Yeah. So for the Workforce Australia contract, we have what's known as the Quality Assurance Framework, which sets out our need to be accredited as ISO 9001, which is the quality standard compliant. And then we have a quality principles audit that is actually undertaken by a third-party external auditor that needs to then be sent back through to DWA, and they sign off that they are comfortable with the fact that we've met those obligations. And on top of that, we are also, and Amanda will touch on this a bit later around information security, but we need to be ISO 27001 right fit for risk accredited, which is a whole nother accreditation piece that Amanda will speak to. When I get to IEA, there is a different set of auditing requirements, and I can touch on that then. But essentially for Workforce Australia, our focus is around supporting people into employment and supporting them to remain employment for 26 weeks of employment, after which time they exit the program unless they fall out of employment and can return then under that certain conditions. So that is the Workforce Australia contract. If I move to transition to work, this is a subset of the Workforce Australia services and is particularly youth focused. So it assists 15 to 24-year-olds. If they complete this program and they are still out of employment, they would move into the Workforce Australia contract. So there is a pathway into that overarching program. We only operate this program in one employment region, being Golden Murray, and we have 7 sites that service across that region. And this program doesn't have any mandatory compliance, so I made mention of mutual obligations. That doesn't apply to the Transition to Work program. And this program is not just about employment, it also is about education. A lot of the participants in this program are either disengaged from school and early school leavers potentially. So really this provides a pathway to help re-engage, but also we know that for disengaged youth, the idea of reconnecting with formalised education is somewhat of a challenge, and so we do a number of strategies to really engage with them and break that down and start small and then work towards finding suitable education pathways for them that will help then their overarching goal of employment. So that's the purpose of this program.
But you just want to touch on too the amount of providers in each of the programs too, because
yeah,
they do differ.
Yes, so with regard to Workforce Australia, there are a number of providers in a designated employment region, so there is some competition and participants can move from provider to provider within their local area. From a transition to work perspective, this is a non-competitive program, so there is only one provider in each employment region. So we are the only provider for the transition to work program in Goulburn Murray. That is a fantastic position to be in, but it also then becomes a highly competitive contract then when we move into a contracting environment. So, and I'll touch on that shortly.
And I think just for context, there's 51 regions in Australia, employment regions. I think it's about that. Just to put into context, just so you know, there's that many providers.
If I move on to Parent Pathways, which is the final program that sits under the DEWA department. This program commenced, it's just celebrated its 12-month anniversary back in October. So it's been an ongoing program. It was previously in a previous iteration called Parents Next, is now called Parent Pathways. And it was a brand new program in the eyes of the department, introducing it as a voluntary program. So there is no ability to compel someone to participate in this program. It is purely voluntary. And within this program, what is unique about it is our obligations to really be out engaging in community to source participants to actually register into this program. The previous Parents Next program had a much stronger feed of participation through Services Australia. However, this one, when we moved to the voluntary component, we found that that dropped off, and we're now having to do a lot more active engagement in community and marketing to generate leads into the program. A particular example of that was last year. The whole team was out at the Melbourne show and was doing a lot of advocacy and sort of raising awareness of the program, what it can do and the opportunity it can provide for people, but also where they can register and actually connect in with a provider. The Melbourne show actually is run in one of the regions that we are a provider of in Western Melbourne. However, with the Melbourne show, as you know, there's a lot of attendance from across Victoria that attends, and so we were also referring people to other providers in their local area. So this program is similar to the Transition to Work program in that it is a non-competitive program and there is only one provider per employment region. So we hold the contract for Goulburn Murray and Bendigo. Western Melbourne is slightly different because they actually nominated, because of the size of the region, they allocated 2 providers into the Western Melbourne region, but they delineated which postcodes we could service. So if someone presents from a particular postcode, they are directly referred to the other provider or us if it's within our scope. We are the predominant provider in the Western Melbourne region though. There is still participant choice, however, within this program, whereas if someone is living in the other designated providers area and they want to come to us as their provider, they can opt to do that. So so that is available there.
And Fleur, just for the size of that Melbourne show commitment from the team, they were there for the 10 days for nearly 12 hours a day. Wow. And saw over 5,000 people. And we have a CRM system, so they couldn't do a lot of appointments or that there because they're in the community pavilion. But they got heaps of referrals, and then they run it through our CRM, and then it gets allocated to the right. Because it's regional, a lot of people from the country and our other regions are all there. So the department really liked the fact that we just didn't, if there's somebody didn't fit into our region, we just didn't send them off. We actually referred them on to other providers and that. So yeah, it's a goodwill thing, and I think it sent the right message that we'll probably commit to that again next year.
Correct. This program supports parents and carers of children that and can be part of the program until their child turns 6 years of age, or until such time their youngest child turns 6 years of age, or until such time as they're in employment. So there are some conditions around if they are already employed, they cannot participate in this program, even if that employment is not the employment that they want to be in. So there's some parameters in which we must work in regards to that.
Well, is there a limit of the number of people who can participate in the program? Is the contract centred on particular numbers?
No, there isn't. What we find is that there is no caps on the number of participants in any of our programs. However, what we do observe is if there is a limited and finite funding threshold for all of the programs. And so if they start to get oversubscribed, I would imagine that the government would then start to tweak eligibility and other criteria to try and manage the funding threshold.
So just before Christmas, we had one of the heads of the department, one of the assistant deputy secretaries here in the Long Gully office. So we talked about what works and what's not working in the program over for the first 12 months. And as Fleur said, the marketing component it's gone right through the roof, more than they would have ever predicted. And they provide a pot of money to help do that. However, it's not fully being utilised because our marketing team's doing a lot of work, but we can't actually pay for them out of that marketing pot. But we could pay an external person, somebody. So we gave them a bit of a solution because they will lose that money in the next budget round if they haven't spent it. So they're looking at how they could fund our own staff or a position out of that pot. So they've actually gone, hey, that could solve our problems a little bit and change of the program. So they're little things that we can provide feedback and some solutions to them as well. So we got an email straight back after it going, hey, look, great idea. We're going to work on it for you now.
Yeah.
Yep.
The only other thing I will call out with Parent Pathways program is the fact that within this contract, there are mandated ratios, participant ratio to mentor. So there is a requirement that there is one mentor to every 50 participants. There is also a mandated responsibility around there can't be any more than 3 mentors to a senior mentor. So we need to have supervisory ratios in place as well. And there are also mandated qualifications and expectations for staff to be either working towards or have certain qualifications depending on the role in which they're working. So that is quite a restrictive, some restrictive parameters that have been imposed in this contract compared to the other contracts that we have. So that's just to call that out, and something that we are constantly working to make sure that we're meeting with the turnover rates that Sam has mentioned. That does present challenges for us within this program. Also noting that we are currently on a growth path as well. So we're not only needing to recruit to sustain the ratio of mentors to participants as we increase our caseload, but also managing the turnover and recruitment of vacancies at the same time. So we've currently got about 5 or 6 vacancies that we're trying to manage at the moment in this program.
And Shannon, so getting back to your original question earlier about the department and separating how much you can spend on admin or things like that, they are slowly starting to control almost your income and expenditure, because we're pretty much our labour costs then are starting to get mandated based on your caseload size too. So
yeah, that's a challenge for NDIS providers.
Correct.
And speaking of NDIS, that's probably one of our biggest competitors labour-wise. In a lot of cases, we can't compete against NDIS. So that's where quite a few of our staff do move, and especially in those in some of those areas. We just find we can't compete. You know, we have to openly say this. Look, yep, we understand you're going to get 15,000 or 20,000 more. We just have to take that on the chin sometimes. But in some cases, those things are not sustainable long term either.
Moving on to our final program here, that is now this program, Inclusive Employment Australia, brand new program that commenced on the 1st of November 2025. So we are still in the implementation and transition phase of this contract, having wound up our Disability Employment Services program at the conclusion of the 31st of October last year. We had quite a number of staff remain in the program and transition across, but we also had some movement around the locations in which we operate. So we were having to make staff redundant in some geographic locations, and we were having to expand workforces in others. So there has been quite a lot of work done in that space over the last 5 months. This program is very much focused on participants with a disability or injury or health condition, and supporting them through to employment. This has a longer period of time in which participants remain engaged with us, and there is a connection with another contract, being the National Assessment Providers Panel. Sorry, I will get that term correct next time we meet. And we support people not only to progress towards employment, but support them to remain in employment up to 52 weeks. And then they are assessed as whether they need ongoing support from 26 weeks onwards. And then that is something that we can maintain moving forward with ongoing support to maintain employment. So that there is some slight differences in this program. There are also different work benchmarks that people have as to how much work they can or they need to satisfy in order to achieve an outcome within the program. So, and there are various categories of benchmarks, with the lowest being 8 hours. So that's the lowest benchmark. However, we can take people that have lower benchmarks, but the criteria of what they need to meet over a period of time still needs to be that 8. So it's quite a technical program that we need to navigate in regards to that. There are multiple providers in any, and this doesn't work on employment regions, this works on employment service areas. So they are different areas that DSS have defined compared to DEWA. So there are multiple ESAs within a DEWA employment region. So if I use the example down in Tasmania, we have the Workforce Australia contract in Northwest Tasmania, which covers all the way from Launceston through to Burnie Devonport, all on that top northern part of Tasmania. Under the IEA program, that is 2 separate employment services areas. We used to have both of them. We lost Launceston when we were awarded the IEA contract, but we maintained the northwest Tasmania part of Burnie Devonport, which is the ESA that we continue to operate in. So we operate 9 employment services areas across Victoria and Tasmania for the Inclusive Employment Australia program. And as I said, we are still in that phase of transitioning caseload, trying to really establish and bed down the numbers and the locations in which that caseload lives and where we can service them and support them. There are many challenges through the transition that have experienced that I'm not going to go into now, but will be discussed as we move through, providing more detail about the financials, but also then the deep dive into how we've embedded this program.
Fleur, where does the referral come for those people?
Yeah, so referral comes through Services Australia. However, there is an opportunity for direct registration, and what we find is through partnerships we can actually find a pipeline of referrals as well. So Jason mentioned the Inclusion Foundation and the work that we did with Impact 21, and that was a source that we could work with them to actually identify participants to be referred to us. We have the same with Guide Dogs Australia at the moment. We've actually established a partnership with Guide Dogs Australia. Justice is the other partner that we're looking at as a potential pathway into the IEA program as well. So partnerships is a really strong way in which we can really embed those relationships if they aren't a provider themselves. And I will stress that there are 2 different types of providers that exist within the IEA program. You could be a specialist provider where you actually provide a designated service to a defined cohort. That might be a particular type of disability, or a particular group might be experiencing mental health, or from a specific cultural background. So there are a number of specialist providers that exist within employment services areas, or you can have generalist providers, and that is what we are. So we are a generalist provider under the IEA program, where we can provide services to anyone. So it is quite a more unrestrictive model for us to be able to support people with a quite diverse backgrounds and disabilities.
However, the challenge for us is that we did have a specialist sort of arm and an approach, which we sort of couldn't progress under the generalist approach because you could only go for one or the other. And then with separating all the specialists out, the caseload size and how you could manage that sort of dispersed. So we've sort of had to take a step back to see how this industry settles down before we can sort of look at that approach again. It's a real challenge. So in areas like Bayside down in Melbourne, we're one of the providers. We've been there for a long time. They were reducing it. They talked about reducing it to around the 7 providers. They actually have 22 in there now. So in that one region, there's 22 providers. So there's 12 generalists and 10 specialists. I think that's would be the other way around. So there's a lot of overlap, and look, the feedback from the department, even some in the department, but from the industry, is that give 12 months, a lot of them are not going to survive because it's very, from a financial point of view, the outlay you have to make to start. And if you haven't got the capacity, the scale, it's going to be a tough gig. So we've just got to take a very conservative approach just for a little bit so that we don't overextend, but we would like to get back into that side of it a little bit more as well. So we haven't given up on that specialist side of it, but we think we could probably do it by in over this next 12 months, start moving back into that offering.
Colin, you raised a question around the churn of the contracts and just wanting to, and how that works. So we currently have, this is the current timeline of our contracts as to where they stand at the moment. So you'll note their transition to work has a current term that ends on the 30th of June 2027. So we're in the window now of the next 12 months where we're going to see some need to do some contracting. And the same for Workforce Australia. However, the contract for Workforce Australia has got an option for another additional year. We expect to hear from DEWA in the next month around what their plan is around consultation on the design of the new program, but also what their timelines are for contracting as well. So we're waiting with anticipation in regards to what they communicate to us.
Yeah, there's a lot of expectations in the industry that may get extended for another year to June 2028. Just, you'll get to understand. So Amanda Rishworth has just come from DSS across to DEWA as the minister. She likes to have her fingerprints on that discussion and how it's going to happen. We don't think that they can do that logically in the next couple of months and get a tender out. There's a lot of input they have to have from Julian Hill's review back in a year or so ago, a number of other things that they've got to incorporate into a new program, and that timelines will be really pushing it to do it properly. So I suspect that they may look to stagger that out another year, but we'll get a better understanding in the next month. For us, it would be good if they separated them a little bit just to have a breather.
It would be nice, yes. Our Parent Pathways current initial term concludes on the 31st of October 2027. That contract does have a further term that can run for a further 3 years. So we wouldn't hear anything until next year in relation to that particular contract and what they intend. The IEA contract is a 5-year contract, so that commenced last November and will run through to the 31st of October 2030. That contract has then a further 2 years available on it, depending on how they proceed with extending those contracts. What's also in the mix is at the moment, they are very much a procurement commercial tender arrangement. So that's how they undertake their tenders. The government is certainly talking, and they've started with the Department of Families and Housing, I think is the correct department, I can't remember. But certainly they're introducing into the conversation relational contracting, which is a change of model of how they engage with providers. So that's certainly a watch and see how that transpires and what that may mean for further contract extensions in some of these programs. So that's a watching space. If I then just finally move on to apprenticeships and traineeships, this is how our organisation started. So we are a group training organisation, and we employ the apprentices and place them with host employers. If I just jump to the next slide, I can show you the relationship, because there's really a dynamic of three partners that really support the trainee or apprentice in their journey as a GTO. So we are the employer, and we have an agreement with a host employer to place an apprentice or trainee. We also have an agreement with the trainee around their employment, and then we have a training agreement with the registered training organisation that provides the coursework for that apprentice or trainee in the qualification that they're obtaining. That provides the relationship between the registered training organisation and the host employer is a blended learning model of on-the-job and off-the-job training. So that's how those relationships work. We maintain the relationship with the registered training organisation, and as Jason mentioned, if the host employer relationship with the apprentice or trainee is not working, there is an option for us to then place that apprentice or trainee with another host employer to still meet the requirements of their learning obligations and their training agreement, whilst not having any interrupted employment arrangements. So because we are still the employer. So that is how the dynamic of a group training organisation works. We charge the host employer for the time worked, and there is a margin calculated on top of that to cover the rest of the operating costs of the apprenticeship and traineeship part of our business. So I'll leave it there and ask if there's any questions before I hand back to Jason. And as I say, I'm more than happy to take any questions if you've got doing any reading on any of the programs, and you can come through to me and ask those questions, but we will be following it up with more deep dives on each of those programs.
Thanks, Flo. Mindful of time, I'm just going to, because Amanda hasn't had anything really to say yet, so I'm going to flick down to Amanda, and we'll come back just to some of the strategy stuff in a minute, just as a quick overview. But yeah, Amanda, if you want to just give us a quick update.
Yeah, it will be quick, and as we said, whirlwind. But so when I started, just a bit of history, started in 2020. At this organisation, there was a small IT team of an IT manager and 3 help desk staff. The wisdom of our new CEO at the time, Jason, and the board decided, hey, we need to get a bit more strategic about how we do this stuff. And I was delighted to be able to come on board to attempt that.
I think it was fair to say, Amanda, we were running on sort of frayed rubber bands on some of our IT systems.
Very, very much so, very much so. And there was really no strategic direction about what we could do with not just our systems, but our data, of which we have a lot. So I'll try not to jump around too much, but one of the first things that we did with that team was expand it, because even though we hadn't done the strategic development work yet, we knew that there was going to be a whole bunch of projects that had to support the work of what we were doing, and we had to start understanding what kind of work we needed to do. So we brought in a business analyst and a project manager really early on to expand that team. I'll jump into that whole, looking to see that block about the investment. When we started when I made the case to the then board about the digital strategy, it was a 3-year strategy with proposed investment of between 3.3 and 4.5 million. We're in the 1 million per annum ongoing part now, which we're committed to. That that was primarily invested in people. So it was about building in-house skills, and we determined that was the best way for us to operate. The reason why we've been, there were also obviously external costs like establishing licenses, more equipment, those kinds of expenditure as well in that first 3 years, and a bunch of external expertise that we brought in initially to sort of do pieces of work within that strategy. The other thing that allowed us to drop off some of the investment after that first 3 years was we actually brought in a couple of short-term roles as well as contracts to help establish the digital program, and those roles have since moved on. Where we sit now is a team of 14, which includes me, and we have now the IT ops team with a sysadmin, help desks, an application specialist, which is important because we're focusing a lot on our systems and how they work. And we also recently added a security analyst, and we'll talk about security and the importance of that in our operations in a minute. We also have a digital program manager. We've segued the BA into a digital program BA and 2 in-house developers. We work primarily and by choice in Microsoft where possible, first choice. Lots of reasons, but mostly very, very keen pricing for not-for-profits. So that really helps us a lot. Plus familiarity, obviously, and also high security stance. So we tend to work mostly in Microsoft. Then we have really spent a lot of time on building a really strong and expert data team. Small, but they're fantastic. So we have our solutions architect, a practice lead for data and analytics, and a data engineer. So that makes up our in-house team. So we're quite hands-on, as well as being doing all of the policy, procedure, etc. work that we need to do. So part of the establishment of the program was to set up a digital program office so that we can actually keep an eye on all of the multiple projects that need to be done to make this transformation work. And we oversee all of those projects centrally now. We have a pretty large backlog, as you can imagine, of projects which are seeded in many different ways. And we are continuing to tweak how we prioritise that backlog into an actual roadmap, so that there's a lot of tension often with more ideas and more things we want to achieve than we can do with the resources that we have. So you'll hear more about that as we go on. In terms of those projects, since we started the program, we've done 57, I think now, different projects, some large, some small. And I'm not going to talk about all of them, but I will talk about a couple that are on the slide there. The Power BI rollout has been really significant for how we manage our programs in particular, because that data was the first set of data we decided to really lift up in terms of making it usable and visual for managing. So the program and performance data is what we started with, based on the fact that what was available from existing systems in terms of reporting was pretty ordinary, and we really needed to be able to make it easy for everybody who runs those programs to visualise at organisation, at a team, at an individual level, those performance areas. So that's been very successful. I will just go sideways slightly to talk about the huge amount of data that we manage and the number of systems that we oversee, which is 59 at present. Some of those are very small little software as a service systems that have a very specific purpose, to great big things like our CRM and, as Fleur mentioned, JRL, which is Job Ready Live. It's a third-party application, one of the 2 only that are approved by the government to be used in conjunction with their systems, which are mandated for us to do case management. So that's interesting. Now, mostly those systems don't talk to each other, and so that data is not easily used. So the organisation was spending a lot of time extracting data out of different systems. We had really complicated but clever spreadsheets in different teams. They were different between team to team in terms of people really needing access to data from multiple places to do the work that they want to do and to make decisions. So we invested heavily in developing our own data platform, and very excitingly, we decided to be one of the pioneers with Microsoft Fabric, and happy to say that is up and running and working a treat. And what we're doing is moving through one by one our big significant data sets to get them in there. Because our data maturity level was relatively low to start with, we have data everywhere, some structured, some unstructured. Wasn't classified, it wasn't prioritised, there was no life cycle management of it, etc. We're building all of that as we go, and that allows us then to do the good reporting that we need to do. It's probably worth also just touching on the CRM briefly, because we didn't have a CRM. I won't go into there's elements of CRM in some of our other systems, but there was no enterprise-wide CRM. And what we're now using that CRM very effectively for business development, particularly with employers, and lead management that come in via lots of different marketing campaigns that we run. The marketing system, our external marketing campaigns are linked to that CRM, and we've done some really smart building where we've been able to do postcode mapping, automated postcode mapping, so leads come in and go straight to the person who needs to manage that lead, saving time. Efficiency, you'll see there is one of our big drivers here, internal efficiency if we can. We can do finance, all incoming emails for finance are triaged in CRM. End-to-end event management is now done by there, community grants management, and we integrated it fully with our customer service centre phone system so that they can do case management, lead management, etc. I know I'm going so fast. Maturity, I won't go into the tools we did, the actual tools, but we did select 2 specific tools to measure our maturity in both digital and data so that we can baseline and move along and see how we're progressing year on year. Just the future focus, that data platform is continuing to utilise it, extend it, bring in all the other data. Integration platform, we've designed one, we haven't built it yet. The integration platform's really important for connecting all of those systems. Again, we can share more detail about that later. We can't ignore artificial intelligence as a tool for us, so we're doing a lot of focus on that at the moment. And the whole notion of lifting service up for all of our different stakeholders where digital can help is a big focus. Next slide, please, Penny. So this is just a picture of, to try and capture a little bit of the ecosystem we're trying to build here. Key data sets, those 4 are the main focus areas we're putting our energy into. How we can then use Microsoft Fabric to process all of that, capture all that data and store it, and then the data into the integration for sharing and exporting reports. That's really a very small thumb. I need an hour for that, sorry. I had some examples, but we haven't got time, so I can't give some examples of how that would work.
I think, Amanda, the important thing is we've done a lot of work in Power BI for all our programs.
Yes.
So, I can jump on here quickly and just find out whatever I need now. At half an hour at lunch, I can see all our performance.
Yeah.
Finance now, we've got all that through Fabric, and we've got Power BI reporting of things. So we're just finalising that so we can see all our reporting in Power BI. And people and culture. So once we get our HR system and we can connect that in through that system as well, all of a sudden we start to connect what's happening from a human resources, finance, programs, and we can start to see a lot of correlations.
Yeah, that's right.
And then ideally with the customer, we bring that into the mix. There's a lot of correlations and a lot of information that we can learn about the relationships from that side of things. That at the moment we have to do it subjectively and sort of, we think this, but we'll be able to have data to support that in time.
Yeah, just the one quick question I have. Thanks, Amanda. That was amazing. Going through all that so quickly. Is do the clients, and maybe the apprentices are a bit different, but are there systems that they log into for training or to see their plan? I'm just curious.
This is an area we really are desperate to get into and identified it right from the beginning of the first strategy. There are government provided systems. They're not very good and they don't necessarily connect. They don't offer a good user experience and they don't allow access to all the things that participants need. We desperately would like to do that. It's difficult. The deeds that we run under are very, very strict about what systems can access what data. PII and confidentiality being really high. So we haven't tackled that, but yes, ideally we would like to be able to say, hey, here's your experience for how you work with us and the government and the employer all together in your app, say, so yes, we'd love to go there.
Yeah.
Just do the final thing. I'll come if that's all right, Penny. Just worth mentioning information security and how important it is, obviously, to everyone in the world, but also in our sector. And particularly, we look after so much confidential information, and we have such high levels of compliance. Fleur mentioned before, right fit for risk. You may not have heard of that. Most people have heard of ISO 27001. Right fit for risk is a government-designed accreditation system, which is a modified 27001, which mashes all of the controls out of the information security strategy from the government. It's a lot, hundreds and hundreds of controls that we have to manage through our management system. We're happy to say we have been accredited for 4 years. We have to be audited twice a year. We do surveillance and we do annual re-accreditations. And just a little boast, our most recent re-accreditation, we got one minor non-conformance, which we were able to fix the week that the auditor was on site. So happy days. In terms of governance of all of that, we don't have a dedicated Chief Information Security Officer, but that function is performed by our information IT manager and our security analyst. We have many committees, IT steering committees, etc. And then training and awareness remains very, very high. So there's a lot of onboarding, induction material that people have to tick off in terms of online training. We do regular phishing tests for everybody in the organisation, and then targeted retraining for people who may not be able to, make it through that test. It just remains. It's a very big part of and quite therefore quite an expensive operation to stay secure. But that's another discussion, I'm sure. I'm going to stop, but I'm really looking forward to sharing more of that with you. We report regularly to the board on all of this, so stand by.
That's terrific.
Oh, I feel tired after that.
It's really been a big piece of positioning, hasn't it, really, over the last few years to get to this stage. So I would assume that you're well positioned to look at, leveraging AI, or at least understanding how that can complement the service offering, the way the business is operating.
From an industry point of view, there's some really big players, like the APMs are got market cap of over $1 billion and stuff. So they've got some significant resources. But I spoke at a conference recently about what we're doing. And we're leading the way a fair bit from the bulk of the industry, and getting data sorted out. So we're heading in the right direction. We just got to keep being flexible because everything's changing so quickly from that side of things too. I'm mindful of time. I was just going to give you an overview of some of the strategy work, but that's probably going to cut into everything else. So, and I'm mindful of we've also got to catch up again soon on a strategy day. So have you got 5 minutes or?
Yep.
Yeah.
I do.
Just a really quick, I'll just jump in really quick because we'll give you the slides and then we can flesh more about it as well. Penny, if you keep just moving through. So the first part is the vision, which out of the Constitution. I don't know if you've received a copy yet. Can you keep moving, Penny? So I'm not sure if Michelle's given you or shared a copy of our Constitution with you, but this is primarily that charitable purpose, which over the last probably year or so, I've really been pushing with Lee and the board that every decision we make has got to have this as a foundation of what we do. And again, if it's not right, we need to look at it as an organisation as well, because it's been in place for a long time. But primarily, this is what we look at, and you'll see then the next part is our vision is our current vision, and then we've got our catch up on the 11th, and we're going to, part of the new strategy was to look at reviewing the vision and the purpose. So it may stay the same, but it's just there to be reviewed. But it wasn't probably fair to put all that in place before you'd started as well. I think so. At least you can have input. So the current vision's opening doors, creating amazing futures. Now that was a bit of a standalone comment. So we've gone and put in the last few weeks some commentary around that to explain what that means. Now I'm not going to go through all that now. If you can have a read, but it actually, when you read what we mean by opening doors, creating, it's more than a vision, it's a promise. At CVGT, we believe every person deserves a chance to unlock their potential. when you look at it in that context, it does mean something. And then when we break down what an opening door actually means, and then creating the amazing future. So I think if you have a chance to read that, that gives you a fair bit of background about what we're about and where we want to get to. The purpose is probably one that, from a personal side of things, I think we could do a little bit of work in just that we exist to connect more people to meaningful work. I actually like the comment down a bit further at that bottom paragraph. In short, our purpose is to change lives through employment. So where we want to do, we don't want to just get confined to employment. There's a lot of things that we do. So a lot of our employment consultants probably work, 80% of their job is probably, the employment's the end result. It's the outcome. It's all the work they do with the participant to get them job ready and support them in their journey. And we don't want to lose that component of it, because there's a lot of opportunity for us that we could expand or improve that side of it as well. So we'll talk more about this over the coming weeks with you as well. Keep moving, please, Pen. Our values, I'll let you read those, but the background to our values is that was actually, they were all come together from our staff. So probably over nearly a couple of month process, we had a consultant come in, and pretty much nearly every staff member was involved in the process of providing input, workshops. It was extensive right across our whole organisation. And instead of just having standard sort of one word sort of values, this is what the staff all came up with as what was important to them in running the business. And it was more a bottom up instead of a board sort of pushing it down. And credit to the board thought it was a great idea and have adopted those as well. So that's do the right thing, find a way, genuine care, better together, community matters. It's all functions of what we do on a daily basis. But we have a lot of behaviours that actually go beside each one of those to say what's an acceptable type behaviours and what are not, so that people can actually in the workplace can help sort of keep things on track a little bit as well. If you keep moving, please, Pen. So the strategic plan. Now I understand you would have got a copy of that, the new one that was just done before Christmas.
Yeah.
If you get a chance to have a read through it, a lot of the initial part was really the background of the environment that it was constructed in, and pretty much decided that 3 years in this environment at the moment is probably long enough with so much change going on. The key, if you just go back, sorry, Pen, the key sort of theme of that whole strategic plan is really amplifying impact through innovation, inclusion and sustainability. That's a big focus. You'll see it right through is impact. Now, it is a bit of a buzzword, but really that's where we want to, how do we impact better across all different parts of our business? And that sustainability is really about our programs, etc., but also the business itself. Where's the options for us for longevity? If you keep moving, please, Pen. I won't go through these in detail now, but really there's the three key impact areas that we want to focus on. Really, it's about our service delivery and how we can work with our participants and stakeholders to even deliver a better, innovative services. So, and that's a lot of listening. How do we impact and work with our community a lot more to get better outcomes? And then that third one is really about the business itself. So a lot of things you've heard today about how do we work with our people a lot more? How do we work with, innovative ideas, the digital, to business transformation? And really, how do we look at different opportunities to leverage our business to grow it from that side of things as well? So nothing's off the table. There's a lot of different ideas that we're sort of looking at, and it'd be great. Your backgrounds are going to be really helpful for us. We're working with La Trobe Uni and Allied Health. We'd really like to progress in some of that areas internally, but external offerings. We've talked about the justice side of it. There's a whole range of other things. The board's been really interested in social enterprises, but it's finding the right one that works for us as an organisation as well. And that's, they're sort of things that we want to look at further. The really quick part I wanted to talk to you about is we're really reframing how we're looking at how we do the business. Back when I was in local government, I did a lot of work in public health. So I worked with, at a regional level in public health, and used to do quite a bit of talks around social determinants of health. So I got connected with a group in Ottawa, Canada, with the Ottawa Charter, and they were really advanced in this. And this, we're talking 15 years ago in some of this. It's funny how some things, the more you're sort of involved, around they come again. But when you look at it, we talk about barriers, you know, the barriers to employment. So we actually want to reframe that as well, because that's quite a deficit sort of sounding word, and we want to make it more a strengths-based. So we're sort of looking at that. But when you look at all the barriers that our staff are working with, you know, that 80% of the work that they do beforehand, it's all based on socio-economic factors, physical environment and health behaviours. They're all the social determinants of health. Employment's one key part of that, and the rest of it's housing, transport, mental health, you know, there's drugs and alcohol, childcare, there's a whole range of that. And they're all the things that limit someone's ability to progress or become job ready sometimes. So there's a number of that, but we want to reframe it. And so I've just been doing some work on it, coming from more determinants of employment. So just flipping it from the employment angle, not the social, and using social determinants as the basis. So we're doing a lot of work on that at the moment, and we'll be really interested in your thoughts and feedback based on your backgrounds, because you've all come in at different levels and have an understanding of that from a different concept. So we're really looking at that, but it also then fits into our stakeholder engagement, because a lot of this is place-based approach, because you're working with all these partners to solve, to assist, you know, an individual in their pathway. So we're really keen to look at that. So Fleur, I'll just chuck to you for, we've only got, this is pretty much the last slide. So
just to highlight that as part of the organisation, we work at various levels of practice. So the individual level being really about working individually with our participants, identifying their readiness, their strengths, their capabilities, and the support needs that they need to progress their journey. And that touches on all of the things that Jason's just mentioned, which is really termed the social scaffolds that contribute towards that journey and build on for employment. At the service level, this is the place-based approach, and really working in a place to strengthen our relationships and the enablers that we need to draw upon to connect people to those other support services to address the needs that they've identified. And then at a system level is really about working with our industry partners and advocating for better ways in which the service system can work more coordinated and really address those overarching issues that we're seeing at a service and individual level. So that's really when we start talking about connections with our research partners, our peak bodies, and also other key strategic partners that work at that system level and give us the evidence base in which to advocate for those reforms and changes, and really provide that place in which we try and improve then the system and the support we can operate at an individual level.
And just to let you know, so from a research, we're really keen to support research. So we openly let universities come into with our teams to do research, but we're also actively involved. We're with a partnership at the moment with Queensland University, working engagement with employers. So they're just looking for working through that at the moment. So we're going to be involved in that process, and the biases that are between, you know, from a provider and an employer about hiring specific people or things like that. So the better we can understand that. Also, the Melbourne Uni with the Welfare to Work team, we do a lot of work with them, and there's a current one that we're partnering with is the place-based approach. So we're looking at that side of things as well. And also then La Trobe, we've been doing quite a bit of work with them from a healthcare side of it, and we're looking at rehabilitation counsellors and their roles in our organisation, but also some surveys. We're getting them to do those sort of work with us as well. So really important work that actually has an impact greater than just us and more in the industry. And finally, from a stakeholder point of view, Fleur, did you want
to? So from a stakeholder perspective, I've touched on the different stakeholders we have around our participants, our employers, but also then our partners. And we recognise that our employees are also our stakeholders, so and have a lot of insight and value that they can contribute in our organisation. So we're at the moment reviewing and redesigning our stakeholder framework, and we're really at that define stage to really work with clarity around the purpose of those different stakeholder groups, what they want from us and what we can offer to them, and then start to really build an engagement experience for each of those different groups of stakeholders. So we're currently at that define stage, and we'll step through a 5-phase process around refining that, equipping our organisation to work with those stakeholders, embedding that, and then having tools and metrics to be able to report the insights that we glean from each of those subgroups as the stakeholders. So that's very high level, and I'll talk to more detail on that in the strategy day.
So that is it. Apologies for it was a bit rushed at the end, but we will talk more about that, over the coming weeks and that with you as well. But it was probably good just to give you some insight that there's quite a bit of strategic work sort of happening. We're really, I think the buzzword is at the moment is we're reframing how we go about things. So some of it's, and again, there's a big push in our industry to be innovative, but you've also got to sound innovative, even if you've got to be innovative, but you've got to sound. So there's a lot of things we were doing, but we just haven't been capturing it properly. So we're looking at that whole dialogue and very mindful that we've got some tenders potentially coming up later this year, and we've got to get all that dialogue right, and we've got to be practicing things prior to that happening. So fair bit of work going on from that stage.
Thank you so much. That was really helpful.
Apologies, that was a bit of a bombard.
That was very, very informative, and it was just, it was fantastic to see the level of detail, the depth, the language, and I think you're describing the opportunity as well in terms of what's in front of us. So that was fantastic. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, that's it. And look, as you know, there's a lot more detail behind each section, but we'll work through that with you. And you always know that you can just give us a call if there's something burning there going, oh, I'd like to understand that more. You just feel free to give us a call. We're more than happy to work through that from that side of it too.
Yeah, and thanks, guys. I'm not going to make the strategy day. I don't know if anyone's let you know.
Yeah, Michelle mentioned,
Which I'm really sad about because I'm super excited about where I can contribute.
But Jane, I did mention to Michelle, if there's an opportunity that we could even just have a chat or something prior to that, we're actually really keen to get your insights, because some of that overlays with some of the areas which you'd be aware of where we want to really look at.
Yeah, and because I'm such a nerd, I've read the strat plan and I've made all my notes. So to have that conversation. So happy to set up another time with you guys. I know it's extra work, but there's like lots of industry connections, and even the return to work, when I think about what the insurers are doing, would be an interesting conversation around partnership and social determinants, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so yeah, really keen to do that.
Yep, no, sounds great.
All right.
Well, if there's no other questions, we'll bid you farewell and we'll catch you again shortly.
Thanks again.
Thanks so much.
Everyone.
Speak to you all soon.
Everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Terrific.